Magic in the Morning with Naked Eyes. Always something there to remind me. I'm looking at the clock. It says 25 minutes, and now it'll be 9 o'clock, so that means it's 8:35. And on Tuesday mornings, Mike Barrett comes in from Barrett Insurance. We talk good policies. Mike is here. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning. We don't have, I saw a bunch of memes on Facebook where we all had tan lines that were the shape of cardboard glasses, and I'm glad to see you don't have it, neither do I. So,
well, I did enjoy it, and where I was, there's no other, I don't care what anyone says, there'd be no other place to have been than where I was, because it was an absolute spectacle. It's just me, my Loki cat inside.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just,
awesome.
I want to go back to the end of last week, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
You said we're going to talk about this. I'm sitting here about 10:23 Friday morning, right? And I'm getting ready to do some production, and all of a sudden my chair starts swinging back and forth. My microphone is doing this in front of me. See that?
For those not seeing it, it was swaying.
Yeah, and so are the blinds over here. I was like, I hollered down to Beverly, hey, did you feel that? She says, I'm feeling it. The building was shaking.
Wow.
So I called down to the Fairbanks Museum, and I got the gal there. And unfortunately, Mark Breen had already headed over to the State House to find out if anybody else had reported it. There was an earthquake that hit in New Jersey, and I felt it sitting right here in this studio.
Yeah, and it was a small one by comparison.
Of course.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I saw some of the pictures from the area of New Jersey and some other places where the roads were damaged and stuff like that. I mean, fortunately, this wasn't catastrophic, but they can happen anywhere. What do you think?
It's a good reminder. They can happen anywhere. This was a 4.8 magnitude earthquake. It occurred about a mile outside of Tewksbury, New Jersey. I forget what exit that is, but you'll get the joke if you know Jersey. But, that's fairly significant. And for something like that, over 300 miles away, well over that, for a 4.8 magnitude earthquake, for you to feel it, it tells you that there is some rumble that could occur underneath us. And what I find interesting in what I do is that, when we're doing homeowners insurance, building insurance, dwelling fire insurance, business insurance for buildings, commercial buildings, do you know the earthquake is what? What are you going to guess?
I'm going to say natural disaster.
It's earthquake. It's a specific peril that
all by itself.
If you don't have the insurance on it, you do not have coverage for it. And so many people, when we talk about earthquakes, say it'll never happen. So they don't choose it. So if you were to talk to 100 people, maybe one would have earthquake coverage. Now, stop talking to me. My watch is talking to me. She's upset. She has earthquake coverage. But it's interesting because if that does happen and cause significant damage, we would probably find most people in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, North Country of New Hampshire, and far beyond those outlying areas would have no coverage. So how do you get it?
Well, you talk to your agent about it, but 13 years ago, the property that I've been renting now for over 12 years had a well, okay? We had an earthquake that I think at that time, not right here locally, but it was like a 5.2 or something, ruptured the aquifer for the well.
Yeah, and they can do that. And I've seen many people have to deal with having to pay out of pocket for that. And I won't say this morning, Jeff, definitively, because I don't have the answer in front of me whether that would be covered or not if you had earthquake coverage. I think they would look at that. I think it'd be something that would be under the microscope of the policy to see if it's something that could be triggered. But with insuring homes and businesses, a lot of times land is not covered and wells would kind of fall into that. The piece of equipment that's in there, which is the pump, if that gets struck by lightning, that's going to be covered. But that's kind of a sidestep from our conversation. So earthquake, if you want it, I would say most policies have it available as an optional endorsement. And it's going to be dependent upon how much you're insuring your building for. And so if you have a $300,000 or $400,000 insurable value on a building, it might be $200 to $300 a year to add earthquake coverage to it. So it's not like it's an extremely cheap endorsement, but unlike, I always tell people every time we're talking, the biggest exclusions to factor in with these types of, with home insurance and buildings, there's no coverage for flood, there's no coverage for groundwater seepage, and there's no coverage for earthquake. Now, groundwater seepage, almost impossible to get coverage on, right? So you want to mitigate that possibility from happening. Flood, you can buy, but it has to be a completely separate policy. Earthquake, you can buy a separate policy. There are companies that sell it. Or in most cases, you can just add it to your existing policy. Now, if you have $1,000 deductible, $500 deductible, whatever you have for a deductible on your building, that's not necessarily what's going to apply to earthquake. It's a percentage deductible, which may be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5% of the building is your deductible if an earthquake happens.
Well, the whole reason...
It causes damage, I probably should say.
Well, no, that's right. The whole reason I referenced that is to say, that within the last 15 years... there have been 2 earthquakes that I know of that have happened around here. And when you think about the majority of the older structures that we have around here, the multi-floored structures is definitely something to think about.
It really is. And so many people say, well, that would never happen. Well, I can point to 1,000,001 cases where people said flood would never happen, and it happened. Of course, none of us want fire to happen, and that happens. So again, insurance is not insuring the high probability exposures. It's about insuring exposures that could happen. Does that mean it makes sense for everybody to have earthquake coverage? Not necessarily, but you should certainly have the ability to make that choice one way or the other. I guarantee you that if we had, a Taiwan-sized earthquake that caused significant damage up here, that many people would call their insurance companies and be finding out the very, very hard way that they don't have coverage for that. And that could be, pardon the pun, seismic.
I didn't even see that one coming. But I mean, when you talk about it, $300 a year, I mean, it's $1 a day for a peace of mind.
Yeah.
In case it happens.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I'll share my tale. So we have earthquake coverage on my house, our house. Jen's listening. It's our house. Jen probably would have not done that. But I did. And I told her, I really want earthquake coverage on it. And then when we bought our building, I looked at it and I looked at it over the weekend just to see. I'm like, I must have earthquake coverage on that. I didn't, so I'm going to add it. You bet your bottom dollar I will. You don't want to be insurance poor, but you want to be insurance protected. So if it makes sense to do it, maybe it doesn't for you. But I think it's worth looking into and finding what the true cost would be before you make that ultimate decision.
Well, through this conversation, Mike, you shared that it can be acquired through a couple of different ways, whether it's an endorsement or whether it's a separate coverage. So if somebody's curious.
Yeah, give us a call, 748-5224. You can find us on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury, online, thebarrettagency.com, Google, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency. And one final thought on the eclipse yesterday.
Yep.
I recorded all the local coverage, Channel 3, Channel 5, Vermont Public Television, so I could watch them back after, just because, it was an exciting opportunity to do that, once in a lifetime, really. And I was able to watch the replay of the Vermont Public Television broadcast with Mark Breen witnessing his first totality. And it was like watching it all over again, to see and hear Mark's voice. It was awesome. And I actually reached out to him and said, I got to tell you, it was like living it all over again. It was so cool. So if you get a chance to see that, I recommend you do.
Well, you know what? I was blessed. I've worked with Mark for the better part of 20 years, and for 10 years here in the morning. He and Lawrence and Steve Molesky and Chris Kurdak, they couldn't have timed this up any better. But for Mark Breen, 45 years ago, when he got into this, he started working on this. This was his life's ambition.
Yeah.
And you're right, to see the look in his eyes.
It was like a kid opening the Christmas gift they wanted for Christmas.
It was.
It was awesome.
I cannot wait to talk to him.
Yes.
Good policies with Magic in the Morning, headed to music from Walker Hayes right here.